They didn't say her name anymore. Only that girl, or worse, the cursed one. Every time a cow miscarried, when a storm came too early, or a child woke crying with fever, eyes turned toward the edge of the village, to the girl who lived in the tattered tent beyond the cedar line. No one remembered who started the whispers. Maybe it was when her mother died, giving birth to her. Maybe when her uncle vanished on a hunt, and she was the last to see him. But by now the story had taken root like a thorn vine. She grew up without friends, without firewood gifted, without hands to help lift water. Her name was Ayanna, but the wind was the only one who used it. At 17, her beauty was undeniable. Dark hair like raven's wings, eyes wide and green like new leaves, but it only deepened their fear. "She bewitches the young men," one woman had hissed, as if admiration was a sin she asked for. Still, Ayanna never cried where they could see. She learned the medicine of silence, fed squirrels in the woods, and carved shapes in the dirt with a stick when loneliness grew heavy. It was during one of those moments, crouched by the river tracing spirals into the mud, that a pair of moccasins stopped behind her. She didn't look up. No one ever came close unless it was to throw stones or mutter warnings, but the voice that spoke wasn't cruel. It was curious. "Why do they say you bring storms?" She turned, startled, meeting the gaze of a boy she'd never seen before. Younger than the elders, but older than the reckless boys who dared each other to call her names. His face was open, kind, and unafraid. "Who are you?" she asked. He smiled slightly, kneeling beside her. "Tasunka," he said. "I came with my uncle from the northern valley." She narrowed her eyes. "Then go back before they poison you too." He didn't move. "I dreamed of a girl drawing spirals in the earth. They told me it was a bad omen. But I think dreams don't lie." That was the first time she forgot she was hated. If only for a moment. They sat at the edge of the fire that night, Ayanna further back in the shadows as always, and Tasunka in the circle of light, yet glancing toward her often. The elders spoke of hunting routes, trade paths, and omens in the sky, but his eyes wandered. She hadn't come to listen. She only came for warmth, sitting on the outer rim where even the heat barely reached. The others shifted uneasily whenever she moved, some pretending she wasn't there, others watching her as if she might erupt into flame. But Tasunka didn't flinch. When his uncle scolded him later, "Do not look at her like that, you'll bring her eyes into your sleep," he only replied, "They're already there." The next night, he brought an extra blanket and left it where she sat. She didn't say thank you. The next, a carved cedar pendant in the shape of a hawk. She didn't wear it. But when the rains came and her tent leaked, and the wind howled through the trees like spirits mourning, it was Tasunka who brought the hide patch and needle. He didn't ask to come in. He just waited in the storm until she took them from his hand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly through the curtain. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "You braid feathers into fallen trees. You never kill spiders, even when they crawl into your food. You hum to the moon like someone's listening." She fell silent, heart twisting at how closely he'd watched. He saw her, not just the curse they named. And that frightened her more than the hatred ever had, because it meant she could be real again. That night, as the fire circle glowed and chants rose to the stars, Tasunka sat beside her instead of with the others. No one spoke to them. No one had to. But one boy nudged his brother and whispered, "Look." The cursed girl has caught another. Ayanna heard it. So did Tasunka. And before she could shrink away, before the shame curled into her chest, he took her hand. Not secretly, not shyly, openly. Let them talk, he murmured. They fear what they don't understand. But I don't. She didn't pull away. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like ash beside a flame. She felt like something worth burning for. They said the woods behind the ridge were cursed long before Ayanna was born. But she went there often, drawn by a pull she couldn't name. The moss there glowed faintly at dusk, and trees creaked like they remembered things. It was the only place where the silence didn't feel empty. That evening, she sat beneath the twisted juniper, clutching the hawk pendant Tasonka had carved, though she still hadn't worn it. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because part of her still believed what the others said, that her presence turned things bad. The deer limped when she passed. Firewood refused to burn if she gathered it. Crops yellowed after she walked too close. These things couldn't all be lies. Could they? She whispered her thoughts into the soil like confessions, letting the dirt take them. But that night, she wasn't alone. Footsteps, not Tasonka's. He moved like breeze on water. This was heavier, measured. She stood quickly, heart hammering. From the trees stepped old Matau, the tribe's spirit teller. His eyes were milk white now, but she knew he saw more than anyone. "You've been walking the dreaming paths," he said. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. "The trees know your blood," he continued, "and the stones remember your name." He crouched before her, his bones creaking like ice. "Your mother had the gift. She walked with shadows and stars." Ayanna's chest tightened. No one spoke of her mother, except to curse her death. Matau reached out and traced the air near her heart. "You see things others fear. That's not a curse, child. It's a mirror. They fear what they are not ready to face." She felt tears rising, but didn't let them fall. "Then why do I bring pain?" she asked. Matau's breath was slow. "Sometimes light looks like fire before they understand it's meant to warm, not burn." With that, he pressed a smooth stone into her palm. It was etched with a spiral, the same shape she always traced unconsciously. "This is not your shame," he said. "It's your calling." When he vanished into the trees, the wind picked up. Leaves danced around her feet. She looked down at the stone, and then to the pendant in her other hand. The woods had never felt so alive. And for the first time, neither had she. It began with the chickens, 2 found dead, their eyes clouded white, wings splayed like they'd been dropped from the sky. Then came the fever that struck the chief's youngest son, leaving him raving through the night about shadows with green eyes. And just like that, the whispers returned. Louder this time, sharper, hungry for someone to blame. Ayanna. She hadn't left her tent in 2 days, still clutching the stone Matau gave her, tracing the spiral until her fingers ached. But that morning, when she stepped out to gather water, a ring of villagers waited. No words, just pointed fingers and fearful glares. The medicine woman, Wichapi, stepped forward, holding a bundle of sage and coals. "We will perform the trial of smoke," she declared. "If the spirits speak against her, the truth will rise in the flame." Ayanna wanted to run, but something in her heart, maybe Matau's voice echoing still, held her still. She followed them to the central fire pit where sacred tests had taken place for generations. The tribe gathered in a wide circle. Even children were pulled forward to watch. The smoke was lit, thick and white, curling like spirits waking. Wichapi cast herbs into the coals, sage, cedar, juniper, and began to chant. Ayanna stood in the center, barefoot on cold earth, eyes closed. The rule was simple. If the smoke avoided her, she was cursed. If it surrounded her, she was pure. She braced herself. The smoke swirled, drifted, then split, half curling around her, half pulling away, The crowd gasped. "The spirits are divided," someone whispered. "She is neither clean nor cursed," Wichapi said slowly. "She is between." Murmurs spread like fire through dry grass. Between was worse than cursed. It meant unknown. It meant uncontrollable. Ayana opened her eyes and saw fear twisting into hatred. Then Tasunka stepped into the ring. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. "Or maybe," he said, voice ringing over them all, "the spirits aren't confused. Maybe they see what we cannot." He reached for her hand, this time not for comfort, but for recognition. "You judge her with fear, but I've seen her with wonder." The elders barked orders. "Take him away," someone cried, but Ayana gripped his hand tighter. She would not be erased today. Not by smoke, not by silence. They didn't call it exile, but everyone knew that's what it was. "For her safety," the elders said, "until balance is restored." Ayana stood at the edge of the village as the sun rose pale and cold. A bundle of dried meat, a water skin, and the same tattered blanket she'd slept under since childhood were all they gave her. No ceremony, no prayer. Just a path leading east, into the forest, where winter still lingered in patches. Tasunka wasn't there. She'd been watched too closely. They feared she'd pull him further under whatever spell they imagined she cast. As she took her first steps into the trees, her feet trembled, but her face did not. She had cried enough tears in her life. Today she walked without them. Deeper into the forest, the wind hummed through the branches like old voices. She followed no trail, only instinct, guided by the spiral stone clutched in her hand. It grew warm against her skin, though no sun touched her yet. By nightfall, her limbs ached, and the silence grew heavier. She found a hollow between two stones where moss grew thick and laid there, staring at the stars through thin branches. "Is this what my mother saw?" she whispered to the dark. "Is this what made her different?" The fire she lit barely held. Her breath clouded in front of her. Then a sound, soft, like hooves. She tensed. But it was Tasunka, stepping from the dark, a satchel over his shoulder, and a fierce defiance in his eyes. "They'll come for you," she warned. "Then let them," he said. "I won't watch you be thrown to the wild while they sleep soundly in fear." She looked away. "You don't owe me this." "I'm not here because I owe," he said quietly. "I'm here because I believe." He set down the satchel. Inside were blankets, flint, dried berries, and something wrapped in hide, her pendant, the one she left behind. "You forgot this," he said. She took it slowly, then met his eyes. "They cast me out like a shadow," she murmured. "Then let's show them shadows can guide the lost," he replied. Together they built a fire that night, not to survive, but to reclaim warmth. Ayana slept, not peacefully, but without fear. And in her dream, her mother smiled from the edge of a stream, whispering, "It begins here." The fire cracked low, throwing amber light across Tasunka's face as he slept beside her, close enough to share warmth, far enough to respect the silence that wrapped around her like a second skin. Ayana didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because something in the woods called to her, not with sound, but memory. She closed her eyes only briefly, but when she did, the world shifted. She was no longer in the hollow between the stones. She stood in a circle of towering pines, their trunks pulsing faintly with light. The sky above swirled like water, deep blue with glimmers like stars and eyes all at once. And in the center, a river that whispered, not with water, but with voices. One voice rose clearer than the rest, her mother's. "He is not here by chance," it said. He carries the other half of your fire." Ayana stepped forward, and as she did, Tasunka appeared in the dream, barefoot, shirtless, marked with ochre and feathers. But his eyes were closed, as if he didn't yet see the path beneath him. "You were born of shadow," her mother's voice echoed, "but not to bring fear, to guide. You are not cursed, Ayana. You are the one who remembers." She reached out to touch his shoulder. As her fingers met his skin, light burst from the ground in spirals, spirals like the stone she carried. He opened his eyes. "I've seen this place," he whispered. "Since I was a child." She gasped. "This is your dream too?" "It always ended before I could see the face," he said, stepping closer. "Now I see you." They stood in silence, the wind of the dream brushing past like breath, and then her mother's voice one final time. "To awaken the gift, you must let go of shame." Ayana woke with tears already sliding down her cheeks. Tasunka stirred, eyes blinking open, looking at her with concern. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly, then reached into her satchel and pulled out the hawk pendant. Without a word, she placed it around her neck. "I'm done hiding," she said. "No more fear." He looked at her, not with surprise, but with knowing. "Good," he said, "because the real storm is coming, and it's not you they should fear." In the distance, a howl rose, a warning or a challenge. Either way, they were no longer running. The storm didn't come with thunder. It came with boots and voices, snapping twigs and brittle tempers. At dawn, 3 warriors from the village arrived at the edge of the hollow. Their faces were painted for confrontation, not ceremony. "She must return," one barked, ignoring the fire, the signs of peace. "The fever has spread." 2 more children fell ill. The elders believe the curse followed her into the forest. Ayana stood slowly, her back straight, the pendant visible around her throat. She said nothing. Let them speak. Let them reveal their fear. Tasunka stepped forward. "She brought no illness. You fear what you refuse to understand. You exile your own to chase shadows." The tallest warrior snarled. "You've been poisoned by her lies." But Ayana raised a hand, not to silence Tasunka, but to steady the moment. "I've had dreams," she said, calm and low. "And in them, the sickness isn't from me. It's from the well. The water flows from dead roots, roots rotting beneath the old burial ground." The men scoffed, but one, younger and less hardened, blinked. "How would you know that?" "Because I listened," she said. "Because I saw what no one else would see." She turned, picking up her stone with the etched spiral and holding it out. "This was my shame once. But it's the key. The land speaks in symbols. Your warriors can fight a girl, or they can follow the truth." Silence. The wind stirred. Then the youngest warrior turned to the others. "There's no harm in checking the well." The leader scowled. "You'd trust her visions?" "She's been right before," the younger one muttered, "and we've been wrong." They argued in low tones, but Ayana already knew. They wouldn't take her by force, not anymore. They would leave confused, conflicted. And they did. By nightfall, the hollow was quiet again. Tasunka watched the fire, then glanced at her. "You're not afraid of them anymore." She shook her head. "I'm not afraid of being seen anymore." "They'll come back," he said, "this time with questions." "Then we give them answers," she replied. "Not for revenge, for healing." And when the stars rose, she began carving spirals into the dirt again. But this time, not to feel less alone. This time she was drawing a map forward. They arrived 3 days later, not in anger, but in desperation. The young warrior who'd doubted his own orders led them back to the hollow, his face pale, his voice cracked. "You were right," he said to Ayana without shame. The water at the well runs dark. We found roots, twisted and rotting beneath the northern hill. The sickness spreads faster now. We need help." Ayana didn't answer right away. She looked at the spiral stone in her palm, then at the earth beneath her feet, then finally at Tasunka. "I can guide them," she said softly. "But they have to walk beside me this time, not behind or ahead. Not with fear." The warriors nodded, too tired to resist. She gathered herbs, some rare, some dangerous, and with Tasunka beside her, returned to the village for the first time in weeks. No children threw stones, no elders scolded, just silence and wide, guilty eyes. She knelt beside the sick children, placing her hands on their foreheads. Fever raged through their small bodies. Mothers wept in corners. Ayana didn't speak much. She worked. She mixed teas of willow and sage, burned cedar to cleanse the air, soaked moss in honey to press against the burning skin. And while she worked, the villagers watched. Not all believed, but none interfered. By the second night, the fever broke in the chief's son, then the baker's daughter, then the twins born to the basket maker. One by one, the heat left their bodies. The color returned. Breath came easier. On the third morning, Wichapi approached the fire where Ayana sat alone. The old woman's hands trembled as she extended a shallow bowl of sweet root broth. "This is for you," she said. "You've done what none of us could." Ayana accepted the bowl, but did not drink. "Not for reward," she said gently. "Only to remind you what you forgot. Fear is no healer." Wichapi bowed her head, tears falling into the dust. Tasunka joined her soon after, holding a woven shawl the villagers had placed at the tent door. "They don't know how to say sorry," he said. "Then they shouldn't," she replied. "Let them remember instead." That night, as the fire crackled and stars drifted across the sky, Ayana stood at the center of the village, not as a warning, not as a curse, but as a keeper of the flame. And no one dared look away. They began speaking her name again, not in whispers, not in fear, but with reverence. Ayana said this herb soothes the lungs. Ayana told the children that dreams are messages. "Ask Ayana, she'll know." It felt strange at first, like wearing a coat that no longer itched, but still didn't feel like hers. Yet each day, it settled more easily on her shoulders. She no longer lived at the edge of the village. Tasunka had built a small dwelling for them near the cedar grove, where the sun struck the soil just right, and herbs grew thick even in cold months. Children came first, curious and unafraid, then women, quiet and humbled. Finally the men, stiff-necked and still uneasy, but willing to listen. Ayana didn't seek their approval. She offered her fire freely, but she no longer bent to be accepted. Her strength came from the silence between her and the earth, the pull of the moon, and the way Tasunka stood beside her without ever trying to speak for her. Matao, the old spirit-teller, came one final time. His body frail now, movements like crumbling leaves. "You've become the voice they denied," he said, sitting beside her garden. "And yet you never raised it." Ayana smiled. "They were already shouting inside. I just waited for them to grow tired of the noise." Matao chuckled, then grew quiet. "You should take my place when I leave, be the dream walker for this tribe." But she shook her head. "I don't want to stand above them. I want to walk among them." That night, as flames danced in the central circle, Tasunka brought her forward, not as a bride, but as a chosen keeper. No chants, no fanfare, just every soul in the village standing still, watching as he placed the hawk pendant back around her neck. The spiral stone now hung beside it, tied with cedar fiber. "She was never cursed," Tasunka said, voice steady. She was clarity in a world afraid of its own reflection. No one objected. Not one voice rose. And when they returned to their dwelling beneath the cedars, Ayanna lit a single flame and whispered, "Not forgotten, just hidden. Until now." And from the dark, it glowed like a star remembering where it came from. Years passed, and the village changed, not by force, but by memory. Children no longer flinched at shadows. They followed spirals drawn in the dirt as games, not warnings. And when sickness came, it wasn't met with fear, but firelight, herbs, and Ayanna's steady hands. Her home near the cedars became more than a healer's hut. It became a place of returning. Travelers stopped there for rest, for dreams interpreted, or for silence that spoke louder than speeches. Ayanna never called herself wise. She just listened, more to the land than to people, and that perhaps was the wisdom they had always needed. Tasunka remained at her side, not as her protector, but as her witness. Their love was quiet, carved over time like rivers into stone. No declarations, no vows, just presence. Sometimes he'd look at her with the same awe as that first day by the river, and she'd shake her head, laughing, "I'm not magic." "No," he'd reply, "you're something older." When their first child was born, the villagers left small gifts of feathers and beads at the door, not out of tradition, but out of hope. They named her Winona, firstborn daughter, but Ayanna whispered another name to the stars, Ashari, the name her mother had once called her in a dream, a reminder that nothing is ever truly lost. Matau passed quietly one winter, and the village held their first fire in his honor. Ayanna didn't take his title, but she did take his place by the flames, not seated above, but kneeling beside those who still feared their own shadows. And as time stretched forward, her name faded from gossip and rose into story. They told children about the girl who once lived outside the village, the one they'd called Cursed, and how she lit the way back for them all. Old warriors who once spat in her direction now bowed their heads when they passed her garden. Women who once crossed the path to avoid her now brought their daughters to learn. And on the final page of every version of the tale, one truth remained the same. The fire she lit never faded. Even when she was gone, even when her bones returned to soil, the spiral stones remained, each one a reminder that the soul they once feared had only ever wanted to heal. And somewhere, in the woods where dreams still walk, her laughter echoes, soft and free.